All right, everybody, this is it, the moment we've been waiting for all season. It is the 2022 NFL playoffs. 14 teams have made it this far. We have the bracket all set up, and I'm going to be going over Wild Card Weekend. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Actually, I lied. Instead of getting right into it, I do want to have a little bit of a post-mortem on some of these teams because obviously what's it called? Black Monday, like the Monday after the season's over, all the head coaches that are on the bubble end up getting fired. So I'm going to quickly go over which coaches got fired and what I think about that whole situation. I want to try and breeze through it, though, since I got some more time. There's less games to go over. The first thing, Cliff Kingsbury is now no longer the head coach for the Arizona Cardinals. That doesn't really come as a surprise to me. They really ended this season badly. Even when Kyler Murray was healthy and DeAndre Hopkins was there, they weren't doing well. They never really looked like a playoff team. But not only that, DeAndre Hopkins is looking to leave as well, which is going to put even more strain on the Cardinals franchise. Kyler Murray with his torn ACL is not going to be ready by week 1. Lord knows we all remember when RG3 tried to come back from his ACL tear, after the playoffs. We all know how bad an idea that was. So Kyler Murray is probably going to be out for a significant portion of the 2023 season. So the Cardinals are pretty much in one of the worst positions that any team can be in right now. It says here the Cardinals interviewed Sean Payton to try and get himself back into the coaching scheme. They would have to buy out the contract that he has with the Saints. I think that, anyone benefits from having Sean Payton as their head coach, but I don't think he's going to be able to get that much out of a Cardinals roster that really does not have a lot of talent on it, especially with Kyler Murray being out and DeAndre Hopkins wanting out. Lovie Smith is gone for the Houston Texans. No surprise there. Couldn't even tank correctly. The Texans won a meaningless game against the Colts that bumped them away from the number 1 overall pick. So, that's a whole thing. Nathaniel Hackett obviously is gone. From what I've heard, the Broncos have been the most aggressive with interviewing coaches. They interviewed Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, and Jim Caldwell as well. If these guys are interviewing with the Broncos, there may not be too late to give up on Russell Wilson. I think that, if there's a new head coach there and Russell Wilson starts playing like his old self, we can really start to shift the blame on Nathaniel Hackett a little bit. We'll wait and see, but I would not count out Russell Wilson or the Denver Broncos just yet because there's still that asterisk of was Nathaniel Hackett the reason why the Broncos offense was so inept? Still remains to be seen. The Indianapolis Colts, now that, the season is mercifully over for them, they're going to have to look for a new head coach. If they run with Jeff Saturday going into 2023, that's got to be one of the worst decisions an owner could possibly ever make. The Jeff Saturday experiment was just that. It was an experiment. A lot of people, including Pat McAfee, looked at it very open-mindedly, right? Who knows if a head coach who's been in the league for 17 years or whatever can be a good head coach. He's been around coaches. He's been around the scheme. He may know what to do. Turns out he doesn't. So that was a poorly planned experiment on the Colts' part. But the good news is they're able to kind of reload and hopefully they can do something else. But they're going to have to get a new quarterback as well. The Colts are in a deep rebuild. The Panthers need a new coach to replace Steve Wilkes after they fired their coach mid-season. Another team that's in heavy rebuild. Sam Darnold playing well these last couple games are going to make things even more difficult for the Panthers to find a long-term solution at quarterback. Who knows who they're going to pick. And I know this isn't a head coach firing, but I need to get this in. The Commanders have fired offensive coordinator Scott Turner, which I think was the right move. A lot of people were saying that Ron Rivera should have been fired. I don't know. I think that Ron Rivera's chance to be fired was when they were 1-5 and they were just spiraling downwards. You could have fired him mid-season for that reason, but he righted the ship really well. I don't think that Ron Rivera is really a bad coach. I think that he was not getting good offensive play calling by Scott Turner. I think that's the crux of it. And they need someone new to call plays for the offense because the defense is doing great. Jack Del Rio's doing a great job. They had a top 10 unit even without arguably their best defensive player in Chase Young. So Getting a new offensive coordinator was the best bet for them. Also, the Commanders, I don't think, are necessarily in a rebuild. They never really are. They're always just kind of like a 7 or 8 win team, barely on the fringe of the playoffs. They need that extra little kick to get themselves over. And hopefully that will be Sam Howell. Hopefully a new offensive coordinator will get us there. But, you know, it's going to be really hard to compete with a new owner, for one thing, and a new head coach, and potentially a new offensive coordinator. And I think the Commanders aren't in a point. They're not in a spot like the Texans, Cardinals, Colts, or any of those teams that are in full-on rebuild. Commanders aren't there yet. So we'll see what they can do with an offensive coordinator. Now, that's the coaching talk. It's time to get to the playoff bracket and Super Wild Card Weekend. So first up, Saturday at 4:30 p.m., we have the Seattle Seahawks at the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are the number 2 seed in the NFC, but I bet you a lot of people right now think that they are a better team than the Eagles. Eagles kind of limped their way into the playoffs. They lost 2 of their last 3 games. The 49ers have won like 8 straight. It's been insane for them. Brock Purdy was 15 of 20, 178 yards, and 3 touchdowns for 141.3 passer rating against the Arizona Cardinals. They beat them 38-13. What Brock Purdy's been able to do is made things very, very interesting for the 49ers. They started Trey Lance. They were doing okay with him. Then Jimmy Garoppolo came in. They started winning. And then Brock Purdy came in. And then they really started winning. So I think this is just an example of the 49ers being a great roster. Brock Purdy is in a great situation to succeed. Do I think he's a good quarterback? Yes, I do. But I think that if you put him in a worse situation, like if you put him on the Commanders, for example, or if you put him on a team like the Colts, he wouldn't do as well. So he's definitely in a great position to succeed. But when Trey Lance comes back, for example, if Brock Purdy wins the Super Bowl, which the 49ers have a very strong possibility of doing, there's going to be a lot of evaluating to do with that. Against the Seahawks, this should be a layup game for the San Francisco 49ers because the Seahawks really did limp into this game. They were doing really bad down the stretch, and the only reason they made it was they beat a Rams team 16-19. Geno Smith was 19 of 31, 213 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions for a 65.7 passer rating. So, like I said, they have limped their way into the playoffs. And this is a good example of not a bad team, but a low-tier playoff team that is expected to be bounced out of contention by a better team. And it would be a massive shock if that didn't happen. So I'm going with the 49ers. So now we have the Saturday night game, which proves to be extremely interesting. We have the LA Chargers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Both of these teams are in a very similar situation because both of them have not been in the playoffs for very long. Both quarterbacks are making their playoff debuts. We have Justin Herbert and we have Trevor Lawrence, both making their playoff debuts. Both teams very similar. They kind of had growing pains early to mid-season, but they got hot at the right time and played extremely well down the stretch. For the Chargers, they lost to the Broncos 28-31. They still scored 28 points against a good Broncos defense, but, you know, they still lost, right? Justin Herbert was 25 of 37 for 273 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 107.2 passer rating. And then Keenan Allen had 8 receptions for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he caught both of Justin Herbert's touchdowns. As for the Jaguars, they won what was basically a playoff game when they beat the Tennessee Titans 20-16. Now, I don't think this win is very impressive because the Titans, they lost 7 straight, right? They were really, really struggling down the stretch. The Jaguars just had to defeat a very weak team. Saying that, Trevor Lawrence was 20 of 32 for 212 yards, a touchdown, and a 92.2 passer rating. So, had a pretty good game. Trevor Lawrence has really stepped up his game the latter stretch of the season here. So his final stat line was he had 4,100 yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a 95 passer rating. That's for his season, compared to his 12 touchdowns and 17 interception campaign the season before. That is a huge step in the right direction for Trevor Lawrence. These are the kind of numbers that you expect from a franchise quarterback. And it's very, very nice to see the development that he's had under Doug Peterson. As for Justin Herbert, his development took a bit of a step backwards. He had 4,700 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. Similar on paper to Trevor Lawrence, but then you think about the fact that in 2021, he had 5,000 yards, 38 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. So this is a step backward for Justin Herbert. His passer rating went from 97 to 93. That's the worst of his 3 years, but he still finds himself in the playoffs. This is why football is a team game and not a quarterback game. Same thing goes here with Kirk Cousins. He had one of his worst seasons, yet his team had one of his best seasons. A good season for a quarterback does not necessarily always mean the team is going to do well and vice versa. But the point is, they're both in the playoffs here. What do I think is going to happen? Both teams are inexperienced. I am going to go with the home team. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to win. I think that they have just a little bit more of a mean streak going on compared to the Chargers, who, again, they lost their Week 18 game against the Broncos. But I think this game has the chance to be extremely close, probably the closest out of all the Super Wild Card games. And a lot of these, most of these actually, are going to be blowouts. Like the San Francisco and Seattle game, expected to be a blowout, right? So that's what I think about Saturday. On to Sunday's games. So we have one in the around noon, we have one in the evening, and we have one at night. The morning game is the number 7 seed Miami Dolphins at the number 2 seed Buffalo Bills. So with a poor stroke of luck, the Buffalo Bills are in the wild card, not the number 1 seed. That goes to the Chiefs, and they're facing the Miami Dolphins. Fortunately, I don't think that this is going to be much of an issue. The Dolphins lost 6 straight and barely got in by beating a team that was in even worse of a situation than they were, the New York Jets, who had nobody to play for. They beat the Jets 11-6, so it was an ugly game. The offense couldn't get anything going, and that's because Tua's not playing, and he's not playing in the playoff game either. Skylar Thompson's going to be playing, and it's really, really hard to be optimistic if you're a Dolphins fan going against the Buffalo Bills, a team that many people are expecting to make the Super Bowl, and you're going into it with your 3rd-string quarterback. It does not look good. Fun fact, the Dolphins have not won a playoff game since 2000. So it's been 22 years since they've won a playoff game, and it's looking like they're going to get bounced again because they're in a very similar situation to the Seahawks where, you know, this isn't the Lions or the Packers, teams that looked good going into Week 18, making it in. They're 2 very weak teams. The Dolphins and the Seahawks, not the Bills. But I'm going with the Bills on this one. It should be a pretty easy victory. They beat the Patriots 35-23. You know, Josh Allen threw 3 touchdowns. Stephon Diggs had 100 receiving yards. They're at the top of their game. If the Bills lose this game, it'll be the same energy as the Seahawks beating the 49ers. Those would be 2 massive upsets. But I seriously don't think it's going to happen. So next up, an upset that could happen. We have the New York Giants at the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings have had a very tumultuous season. They're the number 3 seed, and they're 13-4, I believe, but they have a negative point differential. And that's all attributed to the fact that the teams that they've lost to, they've been blown out by. Every single loss has been by 2 possessions. Every single win, not every single win, but they've had 10 wins by 1 possession in the 4th quarter. So they have got here in a very unorthodox way. As for the Giants, they backdoored themselves into the number 6 seed. They played well down the stretch. They won games that they needed to, but the problem is when you look at who the Giants have played and you look at who the Giants have beat and lost to, they lose to good teams and they beat bad teams, which isn't bad on paper, but when it comes to the playoffs, you got to be able to, especially when you're the number 6 seed, you got to be able to punch above your weight. And I don't think the Giants are that kind of a team. I do think it's going to be a lot closer of a game than a lot of people expect, but I do think the Minnesota Vikings are going to pull ahead, and I do think they are going to win. They appear to be very beatable. Will the Giants be the ones that do it? I do not think so. And then, if the Vikings win, then they will be playing the higher seed. So they will most likely be playing the San Francisco 49ers. And I don't see any universe where the Vikings are beating the 49ers. So for this wild card game, I'm going with the Vikings, but there's rougher roads ahead for them. And then next up, we have the 6th seed Baltimore Ravens at the number 3 seed Cincinnati Bengals. This is very similar to the 49ers and Bills games where the Ravens have limped their way into the playoffs. They played their 3rd string quarterback last week. This is literally a rematch from week 18 where the Bengals thrashed them basically. If Lamar isn't back, then it may be the end of not only the Ravens season, but Lamar's time in Baltimore. If Lamar leaves the Ravens are going to be in big trouble next year because Lamar is their team. Any Ravens fan will agree with me there. Lamar Jackson is their team. And if they don't re-sign him, their offense is in big trouble. I still think they're going to be a decent team, but they won't be a playoff team if they don't have Lamar. And it still remains to be seen if he's going to even play in this game. If Lamar plays and he's 100%, they have a fighting chance. But if he doesn't play and Tyler Huntley doesn't even play, then they have no chance. Because the Bengals are, they are much better a 3 seed than the Vikings are. The Bengals can beat anyone. They can beat the Chiefs. They can beat the Bills. They can beat the Chargers, Jaguars. They can go all the way and make another Super Bowl run. They're that good. And I think that there's a chance that it happens again. And I think the Bengals are going to beat the Ravens. So this last game is one that I am extremely excited about. The Monday night game, we have the Dallas Cowboys at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Buccaneers lost to the Falcons 30-17. Tom Brady was 13 of 17 for 84 yards, a touchdown, and 106 passer rating. Also, I just want to make this point. Tom Brady broke the NFL record for most passing attempts in a single season at 45 years old. No one should ever say that Brady was washed in his age 45 season. He had a marked step down, but you are not washed if you're throwing the ball 700 times at 45. Tom Brady can absolutely come back next season to play for another team. Whether it's with Tampa Bay or it's with LA or Las Vegas, wherever it is, he can play. I say, let him do what he wants at this point. This is uncharted waters. We've never, George Blanda is the oldest quarterback to ever complete a pass at 48 years old. And Brady is looking to catch up to that and do something unprecedented that we have never seen before, maybe since. So if he retires, that's fine. But if he wants to keep playing, for God's sake, if he can still play, let him. But my Tom Brady rant aside, why I'm excited about this game is the Cowboys got absolutely throttled by the Commanders 26-6. And it could have been a lot worse. We could have beaten them even more. Sam Howell had a great game. Dak Prescott threw a pick 6. This is the kind of game you absolutely do not want in your Week 18 performance. And it's just reeks of what the Dallas Cowboys have done year in and year out. Just bully around teams in the regular season. When the playoffs come around, they fold under pressure. And you really, you can never count out Tom Brady. You saw what he did, not this week, but the week prior, throwing 3 touchdown passes to Mike Evans. That's their ceiling. That's what the Buccaneers are capable of. And Tom Brady in the playoffs is a dangerous, dangerous man. And then whoever wins this game, if the Vikings win, whoever wins this game is going to play the Eagles. And I don't think either team is going to beat the Eagles. So I'm actually rooting for Tom Brady here. I would love to see a first-round exit by the Cowboys after the season that they've had. It just, I love the trend of the Cowboys disappointing in the playoffs as a Commanders fan. It warms my heart. Now, to actually think with my brain on this one, it really could go either way. This is a very similar situation to the Chargers and Jacksonville game where it's going to be the closest contest, which, it should be. It's the 4th seed against the 5th seed. If I had to pick though, I am going to go with the Dallas Cowboys. I think that the Buccaneers, their lows this season have just been so low. I can't see the Cowboys, especially come playoff time, lose to the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are a very volatile team. I don't think they're going to be at their best. I don't think they're going to be at their worst. But I do think the Cowboys are going to be better Monday the 16th and beat them. If they lose, Mike McCarthy's out of there. Jerry Jones is firing his ass. If they have an exit like this, it's going to be another extremely embarrassing playoff exit for the Cowboys. And Mike McCarthy is out, without a doubt, no question. I think even if they win and lose to the Eagles in the divisional round, Mike McCarthy's out. You know, it's just he's not getting what he needs to out of his team. So those are my predictions. If all my predictions hit, then that means that the Bills will be playing the Bengals and the Chiefs will be playing the Jaguars, and then the 49ers will be playing the Vikings, and then the Cowboys will be playing the Eagles. So it's coming down to the nitty-gritty, guys. This is what football is all about, the playoff picture. So those are my reviews. Obviously, it's going to be a shorter video today. I will see you guys next week for the divisional round. Take care, guys.